Alrighty. So we're going to go ahead and dive right in now. So thank you everybody for coming to a live session at the end of a very long in-service day full of learning. And I know a fair number of you are also coming here along with me straight from the Up for Learning session. So our brains haven't even finished processing all of that information, and now we're going right into something new. But anyway, thank you for coming along for that. If you haven't already, please make sure you put something in the chat for me, so that way at the end I can use that for attendance. And also, another great question. If you have any questions, make sure those end up in the chat. If I'm going to answer as many as I can by the end of the session, but if there is anything I don't get to, I want to be able to follow up afterwards. Okay. So a couple of the things that I was going to go over today. One, I know that you guys were probably at the session that Lisa ran in August going over the jump rope expectations for the year. But I was just going to refresh us back to that document for a little bit, specifically looking at the habits of work portion. Now that we've been doing it, let's take a quick look at it and answer any questions that might be floating around there, or things that we don't have an answer for yet. I can add them to my list so that way we can bring them to the team to get those questions answered for you. After that, I have a couple of tools that we can talk about, and we're going to talk a whole bunch about rubrics and answer some of those pressing questions about what are we looking at. So I'm going to go ahead and switch over now to this tab. All right. And in case anybody hasn't saved this somewhere handy, I'll put the link for this doc in the chat for you. So this is the jump rope expectations doc for the year that Lisa went over back in August, and you should have gotten this emailed to you as well. You can save this as a shortcut into your own drive if you want. There should be a little icon at the top that you can save a shortcut to your drive. That way you can always get back to it. So on here, that first part there is devoted to habits of work, because hopefully we all know by now habits of work is vitally important in a proficiency-based system. However, because it is something that can be extremely subjective, we want to be on the same page about what it is we're doing and how we're doing it. So this is our first iteration of having some consistency around work habits. So for those of you at the elementary level, you're going to be entering work habits in for, if you're a general classroom teacher, for your ELA and for your math. So if you teach all of the content areas, ELA, math, science, and global citizenship, for this year, we're just doing it for ELA and math. That may or may not change for next year. We figured those two are the ones that we wanted to see because of how important they are. A question that we've gotten a lot is, why do we have to do it twice in both areas? And the reason for that is, while many students may have similar work habits for both, because they use very different skill sets, sometimes we see students exhibiting different behaviors or habits in one or the other. And that can be very informative as to why we're seeing those differences in behaviors and habits. So that's why we wanted to be able to differentiate between the two. If you are not a general classroom teacher and you're a specials teacher, then you would be entering it for each of your kind of courses, if you will. So, you know, your first grade music, your second grade music, your third grade music. For the elementary level for this year, we are trying it out by doing it every other week or 2 times a month. The middle and high school are doing weekly, but at the elementary level, we're just going to do it every other week. And that other piece that's on here, it says all formative level. When you enter things into jump rope, you can select formative or summative. In the grand scheme of things, calculation-wise, it doesn't actually matter which one you pick as long as you're consistent across the board. However, in thinking about what we're using it for, the team picked formative because habits of work is something that we are always constantly working on, and these scores are meant to be looked at repeatedly over time. Habits of work aren't ever something that you master and you're done with. They're something you have to continue to practice and demonstrate over and over. Please do just be careful. If you switch back and forth between the two, summative will take precedence in terms of the way that jump rope weights grades. So if you accidentally set one of them to summative, that will be the score that shows up, and anything that's formative won't factor in very well. So if you end up at any point with habits of work scores that just kind of look weird, that is one place to check and just make sure that you're all of them are listed as formative. This category includes things like homework and classwork. If in the past things like homework and classwork, you were assessing like, done or not done, attempted, effort, things like that, that should fall under this general category of work habits. Assignments that we're assessing for the content knowledge and skills, those are going to be under that formative assessment category where we're now tagging academic indicators. But in terms of the habits students are showing of completing their assignments, that's part of habits of work. However, and this is important, I'm going to highlight for a moment here, you're not entering every single assignment. Remember, we said this is a score that we're entering in every other week or twice a month. So that means that when you enter in your score, it's how has the student done over the past 2 weeks at exhibiting good work habits. So if you're someone who, tracks homework completion or something like that on your own in whatever system you've already been using, you can continue to do that. And then just every 2 weeks, take a look at how have they done over the past 2 weeks and put in one score for how they've done overall for the past 2 weeks. So that's the idea there. Some of you probably had noticed that there is a unified rubric for grades 7 through 12. And then there's that fantastic question about, well, what about the rest of us? Right now, from what I understand, either most or all of the elementary schools have some sort of either building level or grade level habits of work rubrics that are either already exist or are in progress. At this point, I've seen them from 4 of the elementary schools, the ones that the coaches have been able to get our hands on. If at some point you get a request from one of the coaches for like, hey, what are you guys doing with work habits? It's because we would like to see where everyone's at. Ultimately, for next school year, we would like to be able to establish something more unified. We don't know at all yet what that's going to look like. We haven't started that process yet, but that is something that we would like to work towards. As the coaching team gets started on that work, we will be reaching out to everybody to see which teachers are interested in involvement at the different levels of that, whether it's analyzing what we have already, drafting things, giving feedback, but ultimately everyone will be able to share their voice in what that's going to look like. And I see a couple of questions popping up. Oh, yeah, great question. Rutland Town, 5th and 6th grade, that are kind of in that in-between range. That is, so Marcia, to answer that, we are going to work on a 5th, 6th, for this school year, we're going to work on a 5th and 6th grade rubric for Rutland Town to use, because from what I've seen and heard, there currently isn't one, or if there is, I haven't seen it yet. I do have the Rutland Town Elementary one already. So for, yes, exactly. Yeah. 5th grade used to be elementary, 6th grade used to be with middle school. Yeah. So that's part of what I mentioned at our meeting on Wednesday. I'm going to be working with the 5-6 group and with the 7-8 group, just like I'm doing with the K through 4 group. So yeah, Rutland Town's elementary and middle school transition is a little different than the rest of the schools in our district. I think for most of the rest of you guys, K6 is all elementary. So, I see Jenna has a hand up. Go ahead, Jenna.
Okay, so when I'm in jump rope, just when you were talking about like how we're supposed to do this, when I'm in jump rope and I'm looking at the how a standard bank, it's attitude, behavior, collaboration, and comes to class prepared and engaged. How do I make it specific to language arts and math? Or is that what we're calling the pacing?
I am going to go over jump rope stuff, so you're just a little bit ahead of me.
Okay.
If you don't mind hanging on to that. Yeah, once I'm done going over the jump rope part, if you still have a question, then ask again, okay?
Okay.
Beautiful. That is absolutely the kind of stuff we wanted to talk about, yes, because we recognize that the jump rope indicator bank is a little messy right now. That's a coaching team summer project, is we are going to clean that up for next year. But for right now, it's a little messy. So apologies. We'll get there. All right. Any other questions about the expectations document? Okay. Like I said, the coaching team, we have at this point been given rubrics from a couple of the different schools. We might even have all of them at this point. I found 3 of them when I was just hunting, but we could also have all of them. But at some point, we might reach out and ask for those. The language that's on those rubrics, some of them has been put into jump rope already, and some of it hasn't yet. So let me pull up one of the examples. Where did it go? Here we go. Okay. So this is the Rutland Town Elementary work habits document that they gave me. So this is what they've already been using. They're going to continue to use this for this year. And these are all set up a little bit differently. If yours looks totally different, that's okay. I'm going to share a couple of the others that I've gotten at this point as well, so we can just take a look at what's going on in the different schools. So for theirs, under work habits, they've selected 5 indicators. So they have behavior, collaboration, participation, work completion, and preparation. For each of those, the way they set theirs up is they have a list of attributes that defines that work habit. And this part here is in nice student-friendly language, from the I first-person perspective. And then below that, they designated exceeds, meets, approaching, and beginning, some statements of I demonstrate all of the attributes. I possess the attributes, but I'm inconsistent, or I need repeated intervention and prompting to display the attributes. Those 3, the meets, approaching, and beginning, they have as the same for all of them, but then they delineated what does exceeding look like. So for behavior, I demonstrate all of the attributes and I help create a positive environment for learning. I help others without prompting. So they have defined what it looks like to earn a 4 or to go above and beyond the expectations. And they did that for all 5 of these categories. And then this was set up so that they could do a score each quarter and put their comments in. So this is what they had used in the past. And for this year, they can use the same piece. But at this point, since I work with Rutland Town School, I've already put theirs in. So their 5 work habits are set up in Jump Rope at this point. So let me pull Jump Rope up. Okay. So when I'm going to go into my test class, it just has a couple of students in it. So from here, you can see we've been having some fun playing around with this one. We can see that there's a bunch of different indicators in here from different proficiencies. Down at the bottom, you can see it says habits of work, and these are the high school ones. So these are the middle and high school ones, because when I was playing around with stuff earlier, I was showing them how to do some stuff. They ended up in here. So this was what I had done with them. If we wanted to then bring in instead ones that we're working with, to add an indicator to your class, again, make sure you're down at the Plan tab. In the upper right, you go to Create Indicator from Bank. And then it gives you everything. So if you're not familiar with the filters, hover over Content Area, select the 3 lines, hit the checkbox for Select All, that way it gets rid of everything, and then check off Habits of Work, so now you can only see the Habits of Work indicators. From here, you'll see there are a bunch of different things in here. Nothing has ever been deleted out of here, so there's a bunch of stuff in here from old systems and ways of doing things that are no longer relevant or being used. Your school's work habits that you've defined on your rubric may not be in here because they may not have been added yet. So that's something that we can put in. You'll also notice that there's also this general one that just says Habits of Work Elementary. That's for if you're only going to put in one score and you're not going to disaggregate between your different indicators. So if I were a Rutland Town teacher, who, by the way, they all have this done because we just did this on Wednesday, so kudos, but you would come in here and go check off there's our behavior, collaboration, participation, preparation, and work completion. So they would check off their 5 indicators and hit select, and that way they would go right into their class. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. If you look at this list and find that, you can see some stuff in here, like this is an old statement from another school, from at the high school level. You'll see that those ones that are being used by the secondary, it says all levels. Those are actually set up specifically for being used at the secondary level. So at the elementary level, I wouldn't, though it says that, I would not use those. You would want to use whatever's indicated on your school's rubric. And again, if it's not there yet, let me know and I can make sure we get your stuff added. So once I've selected those indicators, I'm going to hit select. And down here under Habits of Work, I now have a whole bunch of other stuff in there because it's now added the correct ones. I'm going to actually go through, I'm just going to leave all the extra stuff in there for now. You can see here I set up a unit called Habits of Work. In Jump Rope, units are for your own teacher organization purposes. I highly recommend having one or more units called Habits of Work or How to keep yourself organized. Within here, when you click on a unit, you can collapse it. So that way it makes this list a little less cumbersome. And then also in the gradebook, you can collapse it. So from here, you can see this is the example that I was doing earlier. So I made one this morning. I created a unit In this case, I just called it how. You can just do one for the year. You can do them quarterly. You can do them as semesters, however you want, whatever works for you. And then here, what I did is I created an assignment. So to do that, we're coming up here to create new assessment. So this is going into my test training class. I'm going to call this, I'm going to make one instead because I already had made one for today. I'm going to make one for 2 weeks from today. So that's October 22nd. So I'm going to call this Habits of Work 10.22. Unfortunately for dates, we can't use dashes or slashes in an assignment title. Jump Rope won't let us use those characters. So that's why I'm using the dot. I'm going to put this into my Habits of Work unit. I'm going to make this a formative assessment, and I'm going to select the due date for in 2 weeks. At that point, I'm going to come over to the indicator side. I'm going to go find my Habits of Work, and I would check them off. So in this case, I have to remember now. Let's see. Behavior, collaboration. What else did we have? Participation. Work completion and
Preparation.
Preparation. Thank you. This is one of those tricky things. Preparation and prepared are in fact different indicators. You have to make sure you have the right one selected. One of them is set up to use for the secondary eligibility report, and the other is not. So I was very specific with them this morning about making sure that they check off their specific one. If at any point you are worried and want to have stuff checked, all of the building coaches would be more than happy to help take a look at your grade book before you get too deep into this to make sure that you have the right indicator selected. It's a little bit of a pain to switch them if you've selected the wrong thing. So you do want to make sure that from the get-go, you've got the right stuff. At this point, I'm going to go ahead and just click save. So now we can see in my Habits of Work unit, I now have 2 assignments there, one for today and one for in 2 weeks. At this point, if you're someone who's setting this up for yourself, the easiest thing to do each week would be to just click your 3 dots, say create copy, and then you can change the title of this. And let's see, 2 weeks after that is going to be November 5th. So I'm going to change this to 11.5. Everything else is all set. My indicator's already checked off. I'm going to just change the due date now. There we go. And click save. So voila, I've just made my new copy. The other option is, depending on what's going on at each of your schools and where they're at, is there can also be one person who sets up the unit and the assignments, and then you can actually share that with your colleagues within a school, and then anybody else can import that into their class. That way one person can do the data entry setup, and then everyone else can import it into their class. I know for some of the coaches, some of us have already started doing this with our schools. Others haven't gotten to this yet. Each of the schools is in a slightly different place in terms of jump rope. So if this is something that hasn't happened yet at your school, feel free to touch base with your coach. I'm sure that the others are also happy to help with this and can show you how to do that kind of thing. To then do the grades, you would come over to your grade tab. And here you can see our lovely 2 test students. And in the grading tab, you've got your units are the dark gray and the assignments are the light gray. So here we can see this Habits of Work unit is the first one. And we can see that I now have those 3 assignments set up. So this first one here was the one. These are actually the high school indicators that I had tagged. But then here we go. These are the 5 elementary indicators for Rutland Town School. At this point, I can go ahead and just enter grades like I would normally. And the other tidbit is, like I mentioned, units are going to be important. Every 2 weeks when you go to put in your work habits, you can open this up, but otherwise you click the little arrow that hides habits of work, then you don't have to worry about it. You know, in 2 weeks when it's time to do habits of work again, you open that up, you find the new date, you go ahead, you know, add in add in your scores. You can also hide specific assignments by clicking the arrow in the little gray section. So that's another spot you can hide stuff and get it out of your way. And then you can just hide all of habits of work and that's all gone. So that's the kind of jump rope side of things there. I'll pull up just to share a couple of other things. I'm going to share, here we go. So this is another one of the schools work habits with Rubric. So this looks like Pulteney Elementary School, 3rd and 4th grade. So they set theirs up a little differently. So they have, again, down the side here, so they've got, it looks like responsibility, preparedness, engagement, and attitude. So those are actually similar to the ones that are set up for the high school. And then here, they've done up language for exceeding, meeting, approaching, and beginning. So similar idea, but just a slightly, different setup on their rubric. I'll switch over. This was another one that I was given. So this is Proctor Elementary, 3rd and 4th grade. This one, again, is kind of similar in terms of down the side. We've got, again, those indicators: respect, productively, prepared. They have cute language instead of a 1, 2, 3, 4, a seeker, explorer, trailblazer, and guide. Love it. And here they set theirs up with these nice little check boxes that you can actually use. So this is something that if you're working with students, that you could have them use this to like check off things that they're doing. So that's another example. Another tool you can use if you're doing a self-assessment. Here we go. Okay. This is a self-assessment sheet that I made for the middle and high school folks. So this one right now has the middle and high school indicators on it. But I would be more than happy to make a version of this for anybody else's as well, or you could also make a copy of this. I can put the link in the chat for this as well. This is something that if you've got especially older students that are doing more self-reflection, you can each day of the week have them score themselves in the different areas and put notes about how they were doing. Then on the back, they can give themselves a score for the week and a sentence or two why. At the high school level, because they have to do scores in jump rope every week, that's why this is set up the way it is for a 1 week period. Keep this in the front of your binder for the week, fill it out every day. On Fridays, turn it in, and that way teachers can use this to help them put in scores. So if something like this is something you're interested in, that is an option. The middle and high school folks, I'm also going to they requested this morning, I'm going to make them a Google form version of this as well. So that's also an option that can always happen, especially if you're, a heavy Chromebook user in your class, then Google Forms are fantastic. Okay, I have a couple of questions that have popped up in the chat. Oh, Teresa, the Rutland Town, I don't know if this is posted in the shared drive, but I will make sure that you have it. I'll share it with you.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. And then are we going to decide on a how assessment rubric that is the same across the SU? Fantastic question. Yes. Eventually, yes. For this year, schools are going to continue to use the ones that they already have because we're not going to try and change things partway through the year. And coming into this year, we didn't have enough time to do the work of making sure that we have all of the voices at the table and are coming up with a quality, meaningful rubric. It doesn't necessarily have to be like a K through 6 rubric. It could be something that maybe we decide we want to set them up as, like you saw some of the examples that I shared are specifically, I'm going to stop sharing now. I can see everyone. Some of the examples I showed were specifically like 3-4. So if your school already has them divvied out by grade levels, like maybe you have a, one for K1-2, one for 3-4, one for 5-6. As an SU, if we think that those are developmentally appropriate age groups that we want to have separate language, we can. My suggestion ultimately is going to be that the indicators themselves are going to be the same. So, for example, a common theme is preparedness or being prepared. Like that shows up in a lot of different places. A lot of the rubrics have something to that effect. We could have then just an indicator could be, prepared. And then we could define what does prepared look like when you're in K1-2, 3-4, 5-6, because it is going to look different at different grade levels. With a group of teachers I was talking to this morning, it also is going to look a little different in different subject areas. If you're a specials teacher, coming to your class prepared might look a little different than it does coming to a general, general classroom. So those are some of those things that are going to be have to be considered and I'll take into account. Like I said, this coming together piece hasn't started yet, but that is going to be a goal that by the end of this year, we would like to have something like that. So that way we can make sure we've gotten everybody involved. We can get that information back out to everybody so that going into next year, we're already all set on the same page in terms of having the same language. Some questions that had come up in the chat that I had seen before. Somebody had asked, will we be able, once we get this all into place, have it pop up in Jump Rope all set and ready to go? We've been asking for this for years. Yes and no. Because every year the dates are different, it does need to get redone for every year. Also, the way sharing works in Jump Rope is within a school. However, with that said, if we are all on the same language, that is potentially something that we could get set up each year, get it shared across all of the buildings, and that way you would still have to import it into your class. It's not going to just automatically be in your class, but having the unit, the habits of work unit with all of the dates already tagged with the indicators that you pull into your class, that is potentially something that we could have. Like I mentioned, that's something I did that with the teachers at Rutland Town this week. I had them all copy a setup that I had made into their classes. And that way they're now all set. Their assignments are already tagged and ready to go for the year. Like I said, I know a couple of the other coaches already have this planned for, if they haven't done it with you yet, they have something like this in the works that they're going to do with you. And if not, I'm sure they would be happy to. So as they're working out Jump Rope sessions with you, if this is a need for your building, let your coach know. This is absolutely something we can help with getting set up. We know this is a lot of new stuff and a lot of data entry, so yeah. Jenna, was I able to answer your question? I didn't quite get to yours, I don't think, right? You were asking about something a little more specific, right?
Yeah, so I understand I can pull my indicators and I can abbreviate them into being prepared and attitude and effort. But how do I separate them from math and language arts?
Great question. Okay. So, in Jump Rope, you should have, when you log in on that first page and you have all those little boxes, you should have a little box that's ELA with your grade level and a box that's math with your grade level. You're going to want to put, so like if there's like let's say you were at my school and I had created the work habits for you, you would import that into ELA and also import it into math. Then when you're assessing their habits of work in ELA, you would go into grade the ELA and you'll see work habits there. When you go to grade in math, you can put in work habits, different scores in the other one.
So why do I teach first grade. Shouldn't everything just be in first grade? Why do I have to go back from math to language arts to science to social studies plus a first grade? I just feel like it's really not user friendly here.
So the one that has just your grade level with no subject area, that one's supposed to just stay blank. You're not using that for Jump Rope at all.
That was the one we put all of our stuff into. So we have to re-put all of our stuff into other things. We put all of our standards into that one.
Which school are you at?
Poultney. Because
Okay,
nobody's been giving us guidance on any of this.
Okay, I will touch base with the other coaches. Don't redo everything yet. I will see if there's ways that we can, and because you also if there is stuff we can probably just scoot stuff if it needs to go elsewhere. But ultimately, what's supposed to happen? The reason that there's those different subject areas set up is when students are looking at their grades or the parents are looking at grades. Or anybody else is coming in, when they go in on the parent portal, the first thing they would see when they click on grades, if you only have one class, Jump Rope's going to try and aggregate everything together, which we don't want to mush all of their stuff together. We want to be able to see, how are you doing in ELA? How are you doing in math? How are you doing in science? How are you doing in global citizenship? That's why they need to be separated. And then from there, when they click on ELA, they can see all of the details pertaining to anything that they've done in ELA, including their ELA work habits. So that's why it's set up that way. In the long story short, there is a way to adjust stuff. So if you have set things up in the singleton one, there is a way to move stuff into the different subjects. So don't despair. It's fixable. Any other questions?
Why is this an expectation when we really don't have the training yet?
Well, depending on the school you're at, there's been different levels and amounts of training. From my understanding, there was a bunch of training that happened last year. There's also ongoing training being provided this year. I know the schools I'm in, like I have done a considerable amount of Jump Rope time with my Rutland Town K-4 teachers because this is new for them. So I would just, reach out and say like, hey, can we get some more Jump Rope help, please? I'll also pass that along that Poultney Elementary is looking for some more Jump Rope support.
Elena, can I ask a question and maybe make a request?
Sure.
So I understand about putting where we're putting everything this year, but I would really request that next year we have a class that's called, so in my case, it would be Kindergarten Habits of Work. So I can make a unit for math habits of work and a unit for ELA habits of work. So my students' grade is not going to be impacted by their habits of work. And instead, it's only about their academic performance in each of those subject areas.
So it's actually already set up that way. The way that the indicators are tagged on the back end, anything from the habits of work proficiency does not affect their overall score. So their math score, no matter what you put in for habits of work, within that math category will not affect their score. That score that shows up is purely based on their academic standards, which includes things like math, ELA, science, social studies, and transferable skills count as academic standards.
But then, so as a parent, when I get report cards, I've now got to hunt and search for each of those indicators rather than just look at a score overall. So if I want to know how my child is doing behavior wise, I have to look buried within rather than just be reported out. Do you understand what I mean?
I do understand what you're saying. It's not quite as bad as it sounds. Like once you're actually looking on the other end of it, like we've been using this at the middle and high school level already. And like, for example, like Rutland High School also uses jump rope, and it's not actually that bad. One of the things that the coaching team is doing is we're making a how-to video of how to navigate and read and see what jump rope looks like on the parent portal for parents. We're planning to have that done and out before the first quarter is up, because we know that Q1 is usually the first time that at the elementary level that parents are expecting to see student scores. So we're going to have a video for parents to follow along of like, okay, when, here's how you log in, and when you're in there, this is where you click, this is what you see. If you want to see more, click here. This is what you get to see. So it's gonna talk them through that. It's taking us a little while because we have to create a whole full set of fake stuff to use, because obviously we can't use a real student's account. So it's just taking us a little while to get that done. But now that we're just about at the end of in-service, we'll actually have time to focus back in on some of those things.
And that view is different than what they see when they get their printed out progress report?
Yeah, we also actually have a lot of control over what goes onto the progress report. So if we want habits of work to show up prominently on there, that is something that we can set up. On the teacher end, you guys have some settings for progress reporting, but at the admin level, there's a whole bunch of more settings. And at the admin level, we can actually create custom progress report templates that you can then use. So if that's something that needs to show up prominently for you guys, we can make that happen.
No, I was just more concerned that we had work habits mixed in with academic scoring.
Yeah, it's not going to affect the scoring.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Marcia, you got your hand.
Yeah, it's just me. I just created, it looks like for the Rutland Town, it said K-5 on the one that you showed. It's the same as the middle school. So I just actually copied what the 7 through 12 rubric looks like and then transferred what we have into that kind of form. I think it looks a little bit better and a little bit more understanding. And I just shared it with you. So you
beautiful.
Can see it. And I was going to do the same thing with the self-assessment paper you showed this morning. I'll just make a copy and then I'll fix it to go with our pieces, and then I'll share it with you so you have that access to that. Okay.
Awesome. Thank you. Yes. And then at some point we were hoping next Wednesday, but it's not going to happen yet, but soon we're hoping to be able to get together as a group and work on some of that. All right. It is 3:20. So I'm going to just stick a link in the chat there. Oh, is that the right thing? Yes, that is the forms link. That's the link for the exit ticket to get your PD certificate. Hopefully you've been filling that out today for each of the things that you've been attending and doing. If you can please fill that out, that would be fantastic. Also, before you leave today, please make sure that you also fill out our full day, in-service day exit ticket to give us feedback. If there's things that we can do better, we would really, really like to know that. We know this in-service came up really fast and the schedule is really wonky. Some of it was outside of our control, but anything that we can make better, we would like to do that. So please give us some feedback, let us know, and have a fantastic long weekend. Rest up. You guys are awesome.
Thanks, Lena.